Hello everyone, we welcome you to Glass Academy Webinars 2022. The theme for this year is Ideas in Architecture, expanding to innovation, design thinking, emerging trends around the world, sensibility in architecture. Today we have with us architect Shruti Dimri. Architect Shruti is a principal architect at Anagram Architects, a New Delhi-based practice. We all know this renowned name. She graduated from the School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi in 2002 and has worked on a variety of institutional mixed land use and residential projects with Anagram. Her work reflects a strong emphasis on spatial innovation and reimagining of materials towards design that is environmentally conscious. Welcome, Architect Shruti. We are delighted to have you here with us and we are looking forward to your presentation. Let's hear it directly from you on contemporary architecture standing out or fitting in. Over to you.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you to your team for having me here. I'm going to share my screen now. Right. So as you said, today I'm going to show you a few of our projects at Anagram Architects. And I'd like to take you through each project and show you how in different ways a material that has been used for as long as I've been in practice and much longer than that. But even today, how is glass used in a different way relevant to each different building? I'd like to take you through a few of our projects and some other work to show this. This first slide that I have is of a residence in Delhi that we finished about 4 years back. It's called the Cleft House. Now, it's a typical, I would say, plotted house in a busy street, on a busy street in Delhi, where the entire street has a lot of traffic movement, there is pollution, a lot of noise. There is really no privacy on that street. And on such a street, imagine having a row of houses where the only way to have any view or or light is to have windows on the front elevation. So it's a sort of a quagmire because you need to get light from the front elevation, but you don't want to look outside that elevation, because as you do that, everyone can also look inside and there is not much to see outside anyway. So what we try to do on this plot, and we have faced this challenge or a similar situation on many different plots as well. What we try to do on this is to first of all say that we will not give any windows on the front elevation. So we have on the front facade no windows, only a blank wall, and we get all the rooms to open inside into a central courtyard. So the picture that you see over here is through the central courtyard looking up, and these diamond shaped rectangles that you see in the center of this picture is actually through the glass ceiling on top of that atrium, which is at the ceiling is at the fourth floor or the terrace level, so to say. Now, we have atriums in a lot of houses in Delhi, but over here in a small tight plot, if you cut out an atrium right in the center of the building, then the terrace becomes really unusable because you're dividing that entire space into just a peripheral width all around the plot because the center is all empty. So over here in this project, we decided to cover the atrium with glass, but glass strong enough so that you could walk over it. And that sort of completes the entire terrace floor plate and is, it can be used for whatever, even a party or whichever other ways the people want to use their terrace as. So, so having the central atrium means that if you see all the balconies that are also opening around into the central atrium, will require to transfer all this light into the internal bedrooms, because none of the bedrooms have any opening onto the main street. Now, I want to move to the left. So this on the right side, the picture that you see on the right side is the front elevation. If you notice, the residences on either side of our main plot, all of their balconies and their windows are opening onto the street, whereas in this house there is absolutely no puncture on the main facade. So what does it mean to have a house that has no openings on the obvious frontages all around it? It means that if you are getting light through the central opening, you need to have that light percolate into the nearby rooms all along. And so glass plays a very, very important role in a format like that. If you see the picture on the left hand side, you see these bridges that are connecting across the central atrium again, and the railings over there. Now, more than ever over here, to have a railing in glass makes more sense, because you don't want to create more shadows within that central space. You know, as many surfaces as possible, we want them to be light, so that the free light, as in not be opaque, because the only source of light is this atrium cutout at the top, and you want all of that light to move freely within this space. So in terms of choice of material for this project, using glass for all of these internal surfaces made more sense, because the outside was all completely opaque. Again, in this project, for a lot of internal surfaces, beyond the obvious use of glass as the transparent material, uh, we've used some of the materials. We've used glass in some of the spaces because it also has this reflective quality. Now, we will get into putting mirrors later, but over here, this is all lacquered glass shutters in this and also next image. This is a bedroom where you see wardrobes at the back, which are finished in a glass surface, and then you have these large windows through which light has to come in. So, you know, we've tried to use glass in various different ways that goes beyond the obvious window configuration for any bedroom. Um, and that's the view from the top. You can see the atrium cutout right in the center. You can in fact see through the atrium cutout, through the glass, down till the ground floor level. You can see, you know, some chairs in the center. Also on the terrace level, we added a little sunroom, like a yoga room on top, which also has a glass ceiling on top, and you know, the creepers all around are very nicely growing all over it. So the garden and the lawn, so this lawn portion that you see on the terrace is not artificial turf, and all of that green has taken over all the glass areas, glass surfaces on the terrace by doing that. So that's one project. This is another residence, again in Delhi. This was finished about 10 years back. We have over time, you know, got ourselves a reputation of doing something which is not usual. And in doing that, we end up challenging the default ways of planning space. In one of these projects, in one such project, the client had asked to create a house for them, which was something that we hadn't attempted before, and they hadn't seen anything like that before either. So after several iterations, we arrived at this figure, where in plan, I don't have a plan on the slide today, but in plan there is not a single straight line, not a single linear geometry line in the entire house. So as you see, the outside, the elevation wraps around in a curvilinear fashion, and the rooms inside are also curved. The doors are curved, the door frames are curved, the balconies, as you see outside, are definitely curvilinear. In this house, then the challenge was to to have the windows in such a way that you're not resorting to putting faceted glass to achieve that curve. So this was one house where we got to experiment with curving glass, and also because the geometry of the house is not perfect in circle, like this is not, it's a free flowing curve and not a perfect consistent radius circle. So each of the glass profiles had to be so drawn and manufactured precisely to come and fit in that exact unique location that they had to. So if you see now, I don't have a picture of the open window as such, but if you, this will give you an idea of what all of the spaces inside, from the drawing room to the bedroom to the kitchen, all the walls are curving like this. And so each glass surface all along this building had to be made into that unique curvilinear fashion. So, so in this project, we got to explore that side of getting glass customized to fit the profile over here. The next project is not a finished project. This is our competition entry that was shortlisted for the War Memorial near India Gate, and the requirement, so to say, the urban design requirement was to have buildings that are not higher than 5 meters anywhere around this area. So the War Memorial entire project had to not be higher than a certain height. However, we were told that the center of this entire space could be monumental inside. So if you see this entire circle, there is berming all around. So the landscape gives the sense of a very low-lying overall horizontal scale. But the center could be a tall structure. And we thought that glass could be an appropriate material solution for that central space because of the transparency element of it. And we proposed a very tall, in fact, it was to be the tallest single glass structure in the center, which would be lit from the sides. So that's how the structure was to be. We did not get selected, so this is not a build project, but conceptually we are always trying to explore the potential with glass, because I think no other material really comes as close to what you can do with glass, not even acrylic. And I'll show you another small art project that we did more recently. This is a small art project that we did in collaboration with Parul Gupta under Anagram. We feel that innovation of material has to be constant to be able to find new meaning and create newer spaces in terms of architecture. But I think when you're working with material, trying to use it in different ways through architecture has its limitations, because there are context limitations. Sometimes the client does not want to go all the way into exploring what all can be done. Sometimes it's just not appropriate for the typology of architecture. So when we collaborate with the artists, or we create, when we take material into the realm of art, it's possible to play around with material much more. And I'm going to show you two of the projects, art projects that we did with glass as the start material. This is called Metaprism, where we were exploring what kind of surfaces are formed, when we put together planar glass together like this. And we do know of kaleidoscopes, but that's a more sort of regular geometry way of putting mirrors together, reflective glass together, to see, what regular patterns are formed. Whereas in this, we were ourselves very surprised, because you create a structure together and you theoretically understand that the surfaces are going to reflect, but only when you put the surfaces together do you realize how many more dimensions are formed within the surface, within that space, because you're letting surfaces reflect endlessly into each other. So this was an art installation. This was done, I think, 4 years back. And then a few months back at the India Design Pavilion here in Delhi, we were asked to create a sort of a memento using recycled material, for which also we thought we wanted to work with glass. So the idea was to create something that you can hold and keep, and display. So a memento, like a gift, like a memento, but it had to be made with architectural material that can be upcycled and reused. So over here, it's a curious shape, but what we've done is taken slabs, like thick slabs of glass, and cut them into an incremental profile, such that when you place those different slabs one on top of the other, and you stick them and you grind the round around it, this is what you get. So the X that you see in the center is actually a cutout that is that is stenciled out from the middle two slabs of glass, and then you incrementally, add glass on top of the other. So this actually is, in this picture it seems like it's molded glass, but what it really is slices of glass that was stuck together and then sanded all around to get this really smooth space. It's This particular installation is particularly interesting because when you hold this really heavy piece in your hand, it's absolutely smooth. There is no fear of cutting yourself, but you know that it's formed or it's made from a material that by itself, if you held one single piece in hand, then it's really, really sharp and you would likely cut it. So I think that uh, that little feel of curiosity that you get when you handle this piece is what makes it interesting.
No, that was absolutely perfect. Really mesmerized by all the projects that you've showcased, and each one having its own unique style. So thank you very much for showcasing all these wonderful works, and it was really interesting to note how innovative building materials and technologies are the fundamental forces in your designs. And that brings me to one of my first questions. Like you said that each one of your projects is standing out. It's thought out of the box. So how do you decide about the USP or the unique style for each of the concepts?
I think you don't go out looking for the USP because you don't know what you're after. You know that you want to do something that you have not tried before. So, after 20 years of being in practice, we know how pushing the boundaries, what it feels like. So, when we are trying to sort of go into the uncharted territory, not uncharted, but unexplored territory, we know that we're doing the right thing. So after years of doing this, you know that you're exploring and you're doing the right thing, but you don't set out seeking for the final result because you don't know what it is. So in terms of glass, for example, when you see that orb, when you see that round thing, it's not what we initially started to do. We started to experiment with glass, and although again, it's not an unfamiliar material. We've grown up using and handling it everywhere all around in our lives, but to be in a workshop and to see what it can do, and sometimes when you're working with the manufacturer directly, they may come up with some things that they have experienced when during manufacturing, which as an end user or somebody who designs and draws with it may not know at that moment. So I think working or exploring, experimenting in the workshop really uh, helps you get to that goal where you find something that's new, but you set out to just try something different.
Thank you. That was insightful into the thinking process or behind the scene process of seeing these wonderful visuals on the screen. My next question is about the first project that you showcased, which is the cleft house, and you showed how the rooftop has a glazing, above the atrium. So this is a bit of a technical one where can you answer, like, how do you decide on what kind of glass goes where, and also how to figure joinery details, because they might not be the usual ways of using glass, especially when you're taking them on a roof or maybe using it as a sculpture and so on. So how do you do the R&D kind of behind the scenes work before producing the final stuff?
So since my training is not in glazing design, glass design per se, you have to work with an engineer, you have to work with a manufacturer slash fabricator, you know, And it so happens that on most of our projects and in most of our experiments, even the fabricator has not done this sort of thing before. So it's a new territory for them as well. So I guess you work with them, you try to rely on old knowledge, uh, and you sort of test it out. So it's extremely important to prototype things and test them out. It's important to fail once or twice. I say important, and I don't mean to say that it's okay if you fail. I think it's important that you fail, because if you don't fail, you don't know, how much more you could have pushed. If you're successful the first time, you don't know if, if you really went out and experimented, or tried the really unusual in that direction. So in this case, as in another house which I don't have a picture of, but we had skylights for, uh, there are different challenges that you face that are then solved with the correct selection of glass. So in another house, we had a lot of condensate under the glazing, because there was air conditioned air inside, but each time there was humid air entering, it would just lead to a lot of sweating on the glazing. So then we had to change the kind of glazing that we had used, and we had to give a bigger gap between the DGU unit. So that sort of thing, there is of course hidden trial, but the selection of glass, you just study more, and read up more, find out more, and trust the manufacturer, because the guy who's really cutting the glass and who's really molding it knows best. And also, I think one little point to add there is to over time make sure that you work with people who have the same goals as you, because if the other person just wants to finish the job and not really find out, be invested in the design proposal that you have, then it's not going to work. So I think it's all those things together.
Right. So yeah, R&D is always important, and just prototyping, like you said, especially when you're coming up with newer details. So in any of the projects that you showcased, we saw that that there's been something unique about the approach itself, whether it was the curvilinear facade that we saw in the second project, or in this case, you've already talked about the glass roof. So I'm sure you're facing challenges at every step or every unique decision, perhaps, that's being made. So would you like to add something to the previous answer on overcoming challenges, like not specifically to glass, but like in general, whenever you're making these unique design decisions?
I think a lot matters. What matters a lot is the time and the cost constraint on the project, because there are some times when you have to give up on an idea. Also, you set out, so that's another failure. You set out to try something that's not been tried before, or you haven't tried, or you saw it somewhere and you don't know how that's going to figure out. So now you want to go and try it. I guess when you fail, or an idea doesn't work, then you just park it aside for that time, but you don't really in your heart give up on it completely. So for example, there is you see in this top left picture, you see this curvilinear shiny surface. It's actually a railing. It's a railing around a circular staircase in the atrium. And at one point we wanted to make the railing in complete glass. Now this railing is a straight winding strip that's turning in two directions at times. So curving straight glass in only one direction is one thing, but then to have it sort of curve in two directions is more challenging, and it's something that we haven't been able to, for whatever reason, time, ability, or cost constraints, we have not been able to do it. So um, so your question is what do you do with the challenges? You try and push harder. You try and be a little dog-headed about it, that you will, if not this, then you try and do it some other way, and you work really, really hard to achieve it. And then if your time is up, then you have to sort of park that idea aside for that project and then start afresh whenever you find you can explore it again. I think the time and money, if the money is up, and or if the time is up, then you have to abandon your experiment. But until then, you just hope that what you're trying to do will come through.
Right. So that brings me to my last question. Do you end up critiquing or going back to the works that have been completed, or thinking perhaps you could have done this in another way, or you would want to change a certain
All
detail?
the
Like how
time.
often?
All the time. So not only do you go back voluntarily and critique it, I think how it works is that you don't sort of put aside 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon to look at old pictures and say, okay, maybe I could have done this differently. But on a different site, you probably come across a similar situation and presents itself in a different format, and that you think that, okay, maybe if I'm doing it this way, I could have, you learn new things all the time, and when
Right.
you learn those new things, you realize that you were probably doing it not the most appropriate way before. So yeah, sometimes new materials come up, and things that you were struggling with in the last project are just easier to do in the next one. So yeah, you do judge and critique old work. You in fact, in the studio, we often have these sessions where we share these learnings or mistakes, and we say that, okay, this was done like that in a previous project, but we are not to do it again like that. So absolutely, I think it's important to keep looking back on what you did. Otherwise you don't add up any learning. You just move from project to project, but there is no growth. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. I think your answers truly were very insightful, beyond just the showcase. And that does answer how one fits in and how one stands out. So thank you so much for this wonderful session. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of Glass Academy and Team Ethos for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Architect
Nikita.
Shruti.
Thank you.